I listened to the first speaker, Paolo Ferranati, and he talked really how important exercise was. Remember, our brain was only developed not for thinking. In evolution, it was developed to allow motor coordination. When you're a multi-organism, you needed a brain to coordinate. That's why we are now have something in here to think. In that sense, exercise, movement is critical. And I want to re-emphasize that one point. Because all you need to do is do 5 minutes, 10 minutes of exercise. No, call it nice movement, dancing, whatever. Many times a day. That is much better in physiology than exercising for 40 minutes with high intensity. And it also reminds me of Servaas's talk for a moment, when he said that breath is the first thing a baby does, and when it stops, it's the last thing a human being does. And so the area I want to talk about, and maybe show a few tools, is that process that affects our whole physiology. And that is called respiration and breathing. It's the thing we're not at all aware of. Most of you, I hope, went to sleep last night. Depends if you partied or not. And then somehow you breathed the whole night, unless you had sleep apnea, and you still breathed, except you were going like... and then you're here and you can breathe. And then a few of us may have difficulty in breathing when we have asthma, emphysema, or we get panicky. What we forget is that breathing affects every process in our body. When we change the breathing process, or how we breathe, where we breathe, our emotions change, our illnesses can occur or decrease. So that is the little piece I want to talk about. Maybe I'll do it as a little experiment. Is that okay? What I'd like you all to do is just breathe normally. Now, I have no idea what that means for you. But let's do it in a really strange way. Is that all right? I'd like you just to inhale normally and then exhale only about let's say 60% of the air. So I inhale, I exhale 60%, then I inhale again, exhale only 60% again. Is that clear? Are you ready? Go. You don't have to do it abnormally. No one has to see how you're doing it. Each time exhale only 60%. I think that's probably enough. But how did you feel? How many liked it? No. Unless somebody has yoga practices, you have usually in this audience 3 people who are somewhat strange. How many felt a sense of anxiety or panic or anything like that? Put your hands way up for a moment. Take a look. How many felt a little bit lightheaded or something like that? How many felt the heart pounding? How many all of a sudden felt that neck and shoulder tightening? And how many minutes did the practice take? 30 seconds. In 30 seconds, by changing your breathing just slightly, you changed your emotions, you changed the clarity in your thinking, you changed, for some of you it triggered symptoms, and we're totally unaware we do these kind of changes the whole day long. When we can breathe in different ways, our health may be improved. So that's really what I want to talk about for a few minutes, if I make this work. There. And we know this in English or in Dutch or any language around the world. Breathing represents our emotions, our physical fitness, our spiritual qualities. Just think about it. Some of you have waited with bated breath for this talk. And a few of you will give a sigh of relief when it's all over. Notice it represents emotions. So that means that how we breathe reflects our emotions, our physical states. We get inspired, which I hope we will, and hopefully no one will expire in the time of the workshop. Okay? But I just want to point out, I could spend a lot of scientific studies, but I want to point out there is very good data that by just changing breathing patterns and way of breathing, almost like a baby does, when you teach people who have heart disease, that's the work by Jan van Dixhoorn, that when patients who have cardiac disorders practice this compared to a control group, 2 years later, the occurrence of a second coronary event is reduced by 50%. That is a big change. You can show it equally for people who have kind of IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. They learn to breathe real slow. It starts fading out. Equally for asthma, there are very good controlled studies teaching people to breathe at 6 breaths a minute, approximately. And I'll talk about that for a moment. And all of a sudden, their medication rates go down, their asthma attacks go down. And I can make many more. I can argue for many of these with scientific data. Okay, but I'll illustrate it with a case, if that's okay. And then I'll do a little practice. This is then a 38-year-old mother who has 2 children. She experiences very severe pain here. And she had bleeding, rectal bleeding, which she thought was cancer. Out of that, she got totally anxious. She got insomnia. She got panicky. She had to stop working. The doctor finally told her, no, you didn't have cancer. It was just a polyp. It made no difference. So we happened to work with her. In this case, only 1 session. I mean, that's not normal. Normally, it's skill training. And sometimes the person gets the idea. Okay? And let me show you what she did. We had the person sit relaxed. Good luck. But at least, that was too relaxed already. And now let me explain these graphs for a moment. This is her shoulder tension. You put electrodes here, and she doesn't know it, but you can see, here's her shoulder tension, and somehow it slightly goes up. Here's her breathing. This is her chest. And this is her stomach, which is really a straight line. She has no movement in this area at all. The opposite, if you have a dog. Ever looked at a dog, and a dog is relaxed and lying? The movement is all on the stomach. Or if you look at Savas' baby, you only see this round phenomena with this big Buddha belly moving like this. She does the opposite. So in this piece, we showed that she sat relaxed. I had her just think of her medical condition. She got stressed, because when you get stressed, just like Savas showed, you give the fear reaction. Here you see it. In her case, you would never have seen it on the outside. She had very well controlled. Look at her breathing. She stopped breathing. And then we say, let it go. After we saw that, we could tell her, you have neck and shoulder tension. And she said, yes, how do you know? Well, to me, it looked obvious. And then we talked about breathing, and we said, look, there's no movement here. And breathing is more than gas going in and out. Breathing is also a pump in your abdomen. And so when you inhale and you let this go bigger in and out, it allows the blood flow to circulate better, to come back. Also the lymph will go back. That means you can end up digesting food better. And if you want to happen to get pregnant, people who have difficulty in pregnancy and learn to breathe lower here, their pregnancy rate goes up, or the ability to carry the fetus goes up. You still need sperm. Sorry. So we taught her to breathe like a baby. And in her case, when she talked about her children, she had this big smile. So I could explain, she could remember that picture of the baby. She did do that. We asked her every time she thought of a negative thought to relax and to breathe. Let the air just go down her arms and legs with imagery. So the idea was to use the cue of the worry, the cue of the anxiety to shift. She did that. And when we guided her, she felt much better. So that gave her the hope and belief. And notice how her breathing changed. If you look at this, look now, this is her chest. It's not perfect. Now here, her chest moves. She inhales. This is her stomach, so her stomach gets bigger and smaller. It's much slower. She's now breathing about, and here she inhales, she exhales in much slower. So she's breathing. And she really got a sense of that. Then we worked at homework because it is, in this case, I was not going to see her easily again. And so she practiced this. She said she would practice breathing like this every time she felt rushed. Every time she felt an urgency, I have to perform. And if you're a mother of 2 kids, there are many of those moments, especially with a demanding husband, which she had, really demanding. So she had to learn autonomy. Then, before doing any task, she had to breathe like this. And finally at night, because she had such insomnia, she had to get a bag of rice, put it on her stomach, lie on her back, allegedly smile. And then when she inhaled, she had to push this bag up. So it's like I inhale, my stomach gets bigger. And then when you exhale, you don't have to do anything. And then she imagined the air to go down. And she breathed very slowly. Okay? That meant she also had to talk to her partner, her husband, because they couldn't do 2 things at the same time. But it was not a big problem. And then each time she worried, she was to refocus. She really took it on. She did it. And this is sort of how she did it. And if you want to listen to the rhythm of breathing, it would be like if I click on that little, I think you have to do it in back. You want to click on the little speaker. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. I know the stomach doesn't move in this picture. Okay, what happened? A week later, she was feeling better. Her distress has really decreased. Her insomnia really disappeared for her. Because when you breathe that slowly, the feet often warm up. That is not a problem, I realize, in Aruba. But in other places, it isn't a big issue. She continued to practice. At 3 months later, 0 GI distress, no complaints about insomnia, and 2 years later has maintained her health. She changed her life. It's more than just breathing because it means interrupting the family system, taking self-responsibility, which is very challenging for many people. Okay, but let's just do a little exercise, okay? Do you mind? What I'd like you all to do in a moment, not yet, is to look to the extreme right and then to the extreme left. You know, it's after lunch. We often get a little sleepy. So I want to wake up the brain in here. So I'd like you in a moment to look to the extreme right and the left. Let me illustrate. I'll make a clicking noise, like click. And when I do click, you can't hear this easily, but I would go, and then. Can you get the concept? I'll clap for the ease. Are you ready? So you want to really look to the extreme right and then to the extreme left. Not your head moving, just the eyes. Are you ready? Get set, go. Are you holding your breath? Did I ask you to do that? How come? No, isn't that we quite focused? When we are looking like this, that's what we do on the computer. When we look like this, it is really the triggering of an alarm reaction. There's a tiger over there, and I'm going to say, huh? I give this reaction, and you all did it to a task which was not dangerous. So if the one homework practice I would give all of you is to keep breathing, it's helpful. What I really mean this, observe situations where you hold your breath. They're really subtle stressors. And at that moment, catch it, keep a log, and then take a breath and exhale. And I'll promise you, your blood pressure will go down in many cases. Neck and shoulder tension will go down. It will give you moments of a pause before you before you argue back. Okay, you see? I could ask why you did it. I could just explain that. Oops. I did this purposely because I've done many studies on people like that. I even have videos of myself doing some strange stuff. However, this is just one of our yoga subjects. And this is a skewer he put through his tongue, through here. We have others who hammer knives in their skull. And I do have those videos which we record in the laboratory. What is interesting is he reports no pain. Zero pain. He takes the skewers out, no bleeding. And I forgot to tell you, these skewers weren't sterilized. They were first passed around to the audience, so we could all sterilize them with our hands, with our spit, or whatever. But what did he really do? What was unique about him? We recorded his electrical activity of his brain. We recorded his heart rate. He doesn't give any alarm reaction. He does the opposite. As the skewer goes through, he relaxes inside, and he is exhaling the whole time. So what is happening is, if I have the right sequence here, like this. Here he breathes, he exhales. Now he inhales. He starts exhaling, and as he exhales, he puts the skewer through, or pushes. And then he pauses, he inhales again, and then he continues pushing. Is that somewhat clear? And what you see on this slide is something very interesting. This is his heart rate. That the same phenomenon would happen to all of you. If you breathe about 6 breaths a minute. When you inhale, your heart rate speeds up. That's sympathetic activation. You get more alarmed. And then as you exhale, your heart rate slows down. And as you do that during the exhalation, you're not triggering that alarm reaction. So in a way, as he's putting the skewer through, he's almost triggering the regeneration response, in a way. Did that make sense? Okay? And, and as you could see, the observations for him were only occurred during exhalation. He had no pain, no bleeding. He showed no pain behavior. He didn't go... He had rapid healing. After 5-6 minutes, you would never know he was pierced. I think and he had absolute trust. That is the role of the healthcare system, that he could do it. Okay. Now, so what? What does it have to do for any of us, for people who are older? Okay. So let me just do one more little study. Is that okay? For that, I need to have you all stand up. And how many, when you stood up, held your breath? Check it out. Just sort of stand up quickly. A number of you held your breath. Am I correct? So what you really did is, you were a little kid, and when you were getting up somewhere, you were afraid of falling. So you get up and you go, which is, think of the alarm reaction, which Savas talked about. Remember the reaction? When I give fear, this is just a pattern of old age. So now this time, sit down. Put your hands in your groin area for a moment. Let your stomach get bigger when you inhale. I know no one will love me. And then as you start exhaling, so there's no chair here for me to illustrate, so I'll show it. I'm sitting, I inhale, and then I start exhaling. Does that make sense? So I start the exhalation, and then I get up. Mind you all do that. And then you can sit down again. Okay. How many of you found it was slightly easier to get up or less painful? Yes. If I have an arthritic hip and I get up, I go, I know, before I even get up, I know it's going to hurt. I go, and I hold my breath the whole time. If you are going to experience pain, for pleasure or not, always begin exhaling. I'll never forget my daughter when she was little, and I thought I was really smart. I learned a lot since that time. And I took her to the pediatrician, and and she was going to have her vaccinations. And there was a nurse there, a very old, wise nurse, and here's my daughter sitting. And then I said to my daughter, breathe, exhale, you know. My daughter didn't want to listen to me. I don't understand why. And then the smart nurse said something remarkable. So she said, Laura, you see your father's hair? At that time I had kind of more bushy hair and of a different color. You see this hair? You think you could blow on it to make it wiggle back and forth? Well, she thought this was just great. She went, and as she was exhaling, the nurse gave her the injection. My daughter to this date still doesn't know she ever had an injection. It's much more important than we think. So truly, observe the places where you hold your breath. And if you're going to do any stretching, straining, have pain, begin exhaling and then enjoy the pain. No, but I mean it. It's remarkably different. You get a 50% pain reduction. If you want to do the experiment today, go home, turn the shower to ice cold water. Really cold. Then what you do, I know, I tried. I thought it was I kept the faucet on the wrong way, and I thought it was the hot water. And I thought it was a little bit cool for hot water. But if any of you travel anywhere else and they have really cold water, then all you do, you stand in front of the shower, and then you do your normal behavior, which is when the shower hits you, you go, right? And then you do your other study. We should have split the group up in half. This goes like, this does the new way. And you just go, here's the shower head. You say, I know. I take a breath. And then I very slowly go, shh. You still won't enjoy it. It is remarkably different, however, in the painful or discomfort experience. And that makes it believable. Okay, enough. Okay, let's see. I want you all to just put your hand on your chest, one hand at least, and the other on your tummy. And I'd like to take a big breath. Hopefully it didn't hurt that much. But let's do it again. Take another big breath and let the air go out. And now stand up and do it standing. It's easier. Take a breath and let it go down. And now the question is, what did you experience? For how many of you Did your chest go up more? Put your hands up, it's okay. You can all sit now. And when you got up, did you hold your breath again? You already forgot? So how many found your chest went up more? How many found when you got almost taller when you inhaled? How many found that when you exhaled, you almost collapsed a bit and got smaller? All of those who say yes to those two answers breathed in the wrong way. Okay? Many ways we tend to breathe, and I'm much more serious, like this. The good male model of the military. What we learn also often in ballet. Ideally, you want to breathe much more like this. This area widens. Your pelvic floor relaxes. This area expands. The lower ribs go out. It's a 360-degree expansion. And when you exhale, it comes back in again. This is that pump that promotes the circulation in your whole abdominal cavity. It also lets the breathing be slower. That allows the heart rate variability, the heart rate to speed up more and go down in the exhalation. This is what many of us did. Really, this is how you would like to breathe. Not like this. Oh, sorry. Where we get there yet? Not like, essentially you want to not this way when you inhale, the stomach goes in and the chest goes up. And when you exhale, it goes the opposite. It's like this. You inhale, this area expands. But many of you cannot do that. It's impossible. Because you have designer's gene syndrome. Let me do it this way. This is the 19th century model for women. And if you go to San Francisco, you remember, I don't know if any of you went to San Francisco, but you may have seen they have these lovely Victorian buildings. And there's a set of stairs going up. Do you know what the room is called on top of the stairs? The fainting room. And the reason that was the fainting room, because if you're like this, you walk up the stairs, you're going, and then you faint. And a few of you who have gray hair remember, at least if you lived where I had lived, that in junior high school, you sometimes would hyperventilate. Ever done that? And then you squeeze each other till you fainted? Never done that? That's before drugs were available. I'm doing it as humor, but this is remarkably common sense even today. We now use Spanks, the clothing. We use tight jeans. It makes no difference. But you're really wearing a girdle that means I can only breathe up in here, which increases the risk. It just makes you potentially more for anxiety. It will increase more difficult to really let the breathing be calm and easy. And then the other part is that we tend to collapse, as I did here. This is ideally how you want to be. You want to be tall, even when you're sitting. And this is the traditional cell phone look. But notice, if you think about this look, here's the area where breathing wants to take place. I often tell people breathing takes place in this balloon over here. I know it takes place in the alveoli and the lungs, but you need this displacement to occur. But when I'm like this, there's no area there anymore. I'm squashed. Just all of you really squashed down. And then notice your stomach can't really move anymore. Is that familiar? And for many of you, it's impossible to move now because you had a delicious lunch. And it really meant when you sat, you should have undone your upper buttons of your pants. I'm not going any further. To allow this to expand more. And some of you do this automatically at dinner sometimes. Is that familiar? And those who say yes, you know how good it feels? that means that all the time before that, you are compromising yourself in the breathing pattern and your health. And you can just see the effect when we do research studies on this. Here's a person sitting erect. Here they're breathing in their stomach. This is their chest. Here's the heart rate. This is the healthy pattern. The heart rate goes up. When they inhale, it goes down. It recovers. If you're panicky or anxious or stressed, the heart rate just goes up here. It just doesn't go down. It stays higher up. Here it recovers every time. Now the person sits in a collapsed way. Notice the abdomen can't expand that much. And they lose that heart rate variability. So they're slightly compromising. At any time you do this, it's unimportant. However, day after day after day, you increase the risk for health. Let me go this way. So to promote health, breathe like a baby. But I really mean that. A baby, the whole breathing here moves. Just practice that for a moment, okay? You can, as you're sitting on the chair, you can put your hands right in your groin, this area here. And for a moment, see, you may have to loosen your belt, and I'll remind all of you to buckle up before you get out. And at that moment, see when you inhale, instead of going like this, see if you can let this get slightly bigger. And then as you exhale, think of a lovely memory, positive, and half smile, let the air flow out softly. Let me give a rhythm. So you inhale slowly. And now you could even do it more. And now remember the exercise I gave to that patient example was to imagine the air going down her arms and legs. For a moment, put your right hand on your left shoulder. It would be more fun to do it on your neighbor's shoulder. And now take a breath. So your stomach gets bigger. And as you exhale, imagine the air can flow down your arms. And you can almost squeeze the arms down. And now the other side. Now you can also do your legs. So you put your hands right on your sides. You take a breath. I'm going to put the pointer down. And now as you exhale, you inhale and your stomach gets bigger. And then and now you can come up, and now sit up. Let yourself almost like uncoil. Feel your shoulders right against the chair. Bring the shoulders back. Let the hands be all, palms up for a moment in your groin. And now, just very gently, let the shoulders and let your arms be relaxed. Feel the elbows pulling down. And now as you exhale, imagine like water or air can flow right down your arms and out your fingers. So you're supposed to breathe, not to... See, it's the experience of mindfulness. What happens is when I'm breathing, and I can do this in bed or down my legs the same way, then a thought occurs, oh, I have to pay the bill. Or what about my neighbor or whatever. Those thoughts, that's okay. I go right back to the breathing down the arms and legs. It takes training. It's remarkable how the body can get quieter. So you can breathe just like that, easily. And I'll end with one little exercise that may be useful. Because so many of us, or at least some of us, sometimes get irritated. Is that familiar? We sometimes, or we have a someone's a neighbor and we just can't stand them, or a coworker. Or even is that familiar? There are two neighbors then. What is so interesting, and what we often already do when we anticipate the trouble, we already go, we don't even know, we already tighten up. You know, it can be a coworker, it can be a client, it can be a family member. I don't care. What a very useful exercise, which we found, is what you do is you first think of someone who loves you, from whom you really feel love. Like I use a grandparent, not your husband or wife usually, but like a grandparent, an aunt or an uncle, or your dog. But someone that really evokes that love in you. Does that make sense? That sense of tenderness. For a few people, it can be their little baby. But sometimes if you think of our kids at this moment, it's... At least there are moments when I want to take my children out. I didn't. But for a moment, think of a person like this which makes you sort of feel warm inside. I really mean that. And then I'm assuming that really you don't want to continue your anger or resentment response. Does that make sense? Even though it feels impossible not to do it. And then I'd like you to put your hands on your heart. You can take both hands. And now take a gentle breath in your stomach. Almost have a half smile. And now think of that person who may trigger that response. And now take another breath in your tummy. And as you exhale, just send them a package of goodwill. Not love, just goodwill. Every person has some good part in them. That is what you're sending it to. With a half smile. Like an ocean wave going over them. Do it one more time. You want to move your arms. So you put your hands on your chest. Remember, think of the person who you feel love toward. Then, just assume you can send goodwill to that person who you feel irritated by or whatever, and actually do it in motion. So now move your hands away from your heart as if you're sending, going outward. As if like an ocean wave rushing right over that person. Every time you even anticipate seeing that person, do this. Even when you wake up in the morning and you already know, I'm going to see so-and-so. Almost the first thing you do, I'll promise you, if you do this truly, at least with the patients we have worked with, and hundreds of students, when they have done that, in about 2 months, as if the relationship has changed. And on that note, I thank you.